Good morning, dear student. Today in this class we are going to discuss your new chapter, the Shellfish Giant. The Shellfish Giant, your new chapter. Before going to discuss, first I will read. You listen this chapter very carefully. There lived a giant in the far off land. He lived in a big house overlooking a very beautiful garden. There was lot of flowers, trees and soft green grass. The birds sat on the trees and sang sweetly. Every afternoon after the school, the children used to play the giant's garden. They felt really happy. One day the giant who had been away come back and found the children playing in the garden. "What are you doing here?" growled the giant. The children got scared and so they ran away, and giant said, "This is my garden. I will allow no one to play in it." He built a high wall around the garden and put a board, "Trespasser will be prosecuted." No, the children had nowhere to play. Spring came all over the country. The garden of the giant still had winter. The birds did not sing because there were no children. The trees forgot to bloom. The garden was covered with snow. The giant kept waiting for the spring to come, but it never came, nor did summer. One morning the giant saw that the children had crept in through a little hole in the wall. He could see that there was a little child on every tree. The tree were so glad to see the children again that they covered themselves with plumes and started waving their arms gently. Above the children's head, the birds were flying about the trees, twittering with delight, and flowers were looking up through the green grass and laughing. Okay, we will now go to discuss. The Shellfish Giant. The Shellfish Giant means a big man like Gulliver. Shellfish means greedy. Shellfish, he is only shellfish means he want more, and he is also not giving anything to others. He is selfish. We call shellfish. There lived a giant in a far off land. He living in a big house overlooking very beautiful garden. There was one village. I think you think one village. The giant living in a big house, and the big house also have a beautiful garden. Its land in a beautiful garden. Park. Garden is like a park. There were lots of trees, flowers and soft green grass. His garden have a lot of trees, flowers and soft green trees. The birds sat on the trees and sang sweetly. In that garden, birds came and sat on the trees and sang sweetly. Every afternoon after the school, the children used to play in the giant garden. They felt really happy. After they complete the school, the children all went to his garden and they played, and they feel very happy because there is a lot of trees and there is a lot of flowers and so many birds, and there is a lot of space to place because their children play in his garden. Their children will be very happy. I think you also very happy in playing with in the garden. One day the giant who had been away come back and found the children playing in the garden. "What are you doing here?" growled the giant. One day the giant he saw the children playing in the garden, and he shocked. He told to the children, "What are you doing here?" growled the giant. Loudly means big voice, with a sound voice. He strictly told to children, "What are you doing here?" The children got scared and so they ran away. The giant said, "This is my garden. I will allow no one to play in it." The children all are got sacred, means they are feared. They are getting very much feared about that big man. So they run away. When the giant came and loudly, big voice, they told, "What are you doing here?" The children run away. And after some time, the giant told, "This is my garden. This is my garden. I will not allow no one to play in this garden. Children, you don't come in this garden." He told to children. He built a high wall around the garden and put a board, "Trespasser will be prosecuted." He built a very big wall around the garden. High wall around. Wall means a compound, like a compound. He built one big compound around the garden. When he built a garden, children not came to play because he built a very big wall. Children not came into the garden. Trespasser will be prosecuted. He put a board also. Trespassers will be punished. Trespasser means those who entrance without permission. Whenever you also entrance without permission, you also be punished. Prosecuted means punished. Trespasser means those who entrance without permission. Who are entrance without his permission, we call trespasser. Trespasser will be prosecuted, means punished. When children came without his permission, he will be chance to punish. Okay. Now the children have nowhere to place. There is no place to children for playing the game. Spring came all over the country. The garden of the giants still had winter. The birds did not sing because there were no children. There is no children because there is no springtime. Because all over the country came spring, but his garden there is no any springtime. It is still winter season. When spring season came will become all the trees will be spring, and flowers also blooms. Birds also sing in the springtime, but there is no any spring in his garden because all over the country all the springtime, but in his garden only there is no springtime because there is no one children can play in its garden. The trees forget to bloom. The garden was covered with snow. The giant kept waiting for the spring to come, but it is never came, nor did summer. He is waiting for the spring, but there is no any springtime came to his garden because the children start playing in the garden. When children playing in the garden, all the trees will spring and the birds are singing and also flowers are blooming. But now there is no children because there is no spring in his garden. One morning, the giant saw that the children had crept in through a little hole in the wall. One morning, a giant saw one children make a hole in the compound, and he crept in through. He could see that there was a little child on every tree. The tree were so glad to see the children again that they covered themselves with blooms and started waving their arms gently above the children's head. He could see that there was a little child on every tree. On that day, he saw one child playing in all over the garden, and children playing under the trees. Again, that they covered themselves with blooms and started waving their arms gently above the children's head. The children playing under the trees also started spring season. The trees looking very well, and also flowers also blooming, and also birds also started singing. When the children came from the hole and they started playing under the trees will be looking so glad. The birds were flying about the trees, twittering their delight, and flowers were looking up through the green grass and laughing. When the children came to his garden under they make small hole and they come and playing under the trees. The trees looking so glad, and also green grass also looking started laughing, and bird also started singing, because when our children playing in the garden, that garden will be looking very good, and springtime also came to his garden. And on that time the giant saw children, and he thought, why our garden came, when my garden came springtime? In some previous days there is no any springtime, still winter, but now our garden looking springtime. He thought in his mind, what he thought we'll discuss in next class. Okay, thank you.